you're busy out in the field all day long, every single day. When do I have time to actually document this information? What do I document?
Are you able to share like how you would build a training process around something? And how do I build this out so I can get what's in my brain out and on a piece of paper or a system that I can hand off and start to delegate and buy my time back? So today we have Ben Gonzalez, who is the Vice President of Communications at White Picket and also a speaker, public speaker. So funny enough, last year in October timeframe, I believe. So Ben and myself and my wife, we were all speakers at Landscape Summit. And since then, he's also spoken at a few other kind of conferences with business and leadership. So Ben, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast today with me. And I wanted to kind of dive in as far as like with you and like your business resume and kind of like how you got to where you're at today. So if you could share with us kind of like how you got started like in the business world and kind of how where you're kind of at today in that.
Yeah. Well, firstly, Will, thank you so much for having me on, man. Meeting in Louisville, it was pretty apparent quickly, like you and I's values align and Larissa's values align, and how we think and operate. And so I knew pretty quickly, like, oh, sweet, this is going to be a pretty fruitful friendship and friendship, but also I think in business, there's some things that we can do together down the line. So anyways, thank you for having me on, man. It's a huge honor. So let me walk you through, like you asked, the business resume. So I am the vice president of communications at White Picket Team Management. White Picket Team Management is a business management and consulting firm, and we focus heavily in the home services industry. And so I did not start in the home services industry. I started actually as a project manager for a commercial construction company. But we traveled all over the country, and it was right around the time that I got married that I discovered really quickly, I've got to stop traveling so much. I was gone at least 2 weeks out of the month, most of the year. My wife was not happy about that one. And so I had some experience in landscape as an installer. And so I was on Indeed, I think, and came across a company called Weed Extinguishers for a landscape management position. And I had zero landscape management experience, but I went ahead and applied anyway. And so I got an interview with the owner. And he knew very quickly that I am not going to get this position because he asked me, he's like, we were out sitting in the back patio in his beautiful landscaped area. And he asked me, like, what's that plant? What's that plant? And I got like 2 out of 15 that he asked me, and I dug my own grave. But the conversation was great. My experience in managing projects was not just managing projects, it was managing a team too. And so the leadership and leadership development has always been something that's been on my mind, and something that definitely doesn't come naturally, but a skill set that has been fulfilling to me. And so the conversation was great. And in terms of leadership, I think he and I had a really good conversation. And so although I did not get that job, I think it was like a week later, he being E.J. McCoy, had posted a position for an account manager, as a sales rep job. And so I texted him. I was like, hey, man, I know things did not turn out the way we expected, but would love to interview for this job. And so we went and had coffee, met with a few other people at Weed Extinguishers at the time, and got the job, which was great. I didn't have sales experience per se, but I knew how to talk to people. I mean, sales is just selling yourself and your business, and articulating, educating value. And so I got that job, and really, it was a grind, truthfully, for like a year of learning how to sell. And I am not the best salesman, but the repetitions of talking to people, both team members, but also leads and clients, really helped me get a sense of how to effectively communicate. And that's what I loved. And so About a year in is when I transitioned into the training and development manager position. And so that was specifically for what was We Extinguishers, then rebranded to Chorby, which is a lawn and landscaping, excuse me, all-inclusive home services company in the DFW Metroplex. And so I was designing and developing training programs for team members, primarily sales and customer service, but also for technicians, and designing systems and processes, and then communicating those and empowering our team members to do their jobs how they needed to do them. And so I did that Chorby, and about the time that I transitioned to that role is when White Picket Team Management was established. And so it initially in its infancy was established to be, yes, managing operations and accounting and human resources and just business management for Chorby and other entities under the same umbrella of ownership of EJ and his co-founder, Josh. So that's when that was established, right around the time I did that. And so I was designing these training programs for like 6 months or so. And then we brought on Scoop Soldiers. And so I started doing that for both, designing training programs for both organizations. I had, just like my sales job, had no experience training people. But again, it's the communication that was a learned skill that was to them valuable. And so after a bit of time, my role then transitioned into what it is now as VP of Communications. It's transitioned out of training and is now into public relations and marketing, more so on the organic side. But I do, with my team, develop assets for our paid marketing and the customers that we serve. So been doing that for a little while. And then, yeah, I got asked to speak. Actually, the real story is that EJ got asked to speak at the Louisville, at Landscape Summit in Louisville, and they had one extra spot open, and I was like, "Hey, I'm here. Let me in, coach." And Mike and his team were gracious enough to let me come and speak, and that was the first time I've spoken in front of that many people. And so it was awesome. It was nerve wracking. I don't know if that was like that for you, Will, but I was freaked out, especially because I don't know if this didn't happen to you, but like as soon as I stepped on stage, I started getting feedback through the speakers. And so it was like a minute of me talking and it not going well. So it was off to a little bit of a rocky start, but I think I got back into it pretty quickly.
Yeah, you definitely adapted to that and overcame that. I felt like when I stepped up on stage, I didn't even hear it. I'm like, "Can you guys hear me up here?" You
Yeah.
know? That's
It's nerve wracking, especially with those lights too. So anyways, let me get to where I'm at now. So what my role is focused on now is a couple of different things. I work for a couple of ambitious people. So of course I don't really just do one thing. I do several things just alongside the rest of our executive team that does lots of different things. But it's focused in extending the services and the consultation that we provide to some of our existing customers and under the same umbrella of ownership to now external clients. So now I'm going out and acting in many ways as a business development and going in to acquire new clients for White Picket Team Management. I think you can probably hear the dog toys in the back. Sorry about that. And so looking for those home service business owners who have a need, whether it is bookkeeping and accounting, whether that is marketing consultation, whether that's leadership and team dynamic consultation, things of that nature is what I am focused on doing. And then secondary to that, we are on the journey right now of the Turning Poop into Gold takeover tour. And so that's for the Pet Waste Millionaire brand that I spend quite a bit of my time developing. And so we're traveling across the country right now, visiting all of our franchise locations. I probably should mention Scoop Soldiers is a pet waste removal business. And so we have franchises across the US. So the Pet Waste Millionaire and we're heading across the country. We've got a 43-foot wrapped RV and a wrapped Jeep Wrangler And so with a few other team members, we're going for two major reasons. One, it's awareness to the pet waste removal industry, and two, to franchisee support. So the building awareness to the pet waste removal industry, in my opinion, if you line 10 people up and you ask them, do you know that paying someone to scoop your dog's poop is a service that you can get, maybe half of them know that that's a reality. And so we want to change that narrative, but we also want to be the loudest voice in the room talking about it. And so why not get a ginormous RV and go across the country like road rules style and document the whole thing? So we've got a YouTube series. We have a series that's being published on the YouTube channel, Pet Waste Millionaire. Please go subscribe and like. Follow us on our journey, because it really is a ridiculous bunch of ridiculousness. There's a bunch of dudes living in an RV and setting up shop at these different events. And so that's a lot of what I'm focused on, is connecting with different business owners and different types of events that we want to be a part of, and going up, setting up shop, and talking about the pet waste removal industry and scoop soldiers and the Pet Waste Millionaire brand. And so that's a lot of what my focus is right now.
Absolutely. And that's awesome. Just for anybody watching, I have been keeping up with the T-Pig series and the shorts. They are hilarious and funny, and it's awesome. Love the logo. I think you guys are doing big things with that, seriously, because
Thanks,
there's
man.
a lot of opportunity there for scooping up poop that majority of the US like does not know that is even
Yeah.
there. And I think it's really cool that you guys are bringing that awareness to, you know, all the really 50 states, So,
Yeah.
I wanted to wrap back. So you said that like in your beginning kind of business journey, you really had, focused on building out systems and
Mhm.
training procedures and training processes. And I think there's a lot of business owners out there, and maybe not even just business owners, but managers that are managing 1 to 4 to 8 to 12 different people. From doing all that experience of building out training processes, like how do you even like start to build a training
Mhm.
process? When do you start to train, and like, how do you perfect that with the knowledge that you have? Are you able to share like how you would build a training process around something?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a tendency, in my opinion, for business owners to either think this is too complex and it's just easier for me to just tell someone what they need to know. And I think it's a really easy mindset to adopt, especially when you have one person that's on staff and it's just you and another individual. But even in that situation, it's unrealistic to expect that that's going to be the most effective way to provide a quality consistently. And so it only gets more difficult as you start to grow and scale your business. So now you have 3 technicians, 5 technicians, 100 technicians. And so when is the right time? The right time is now. Now we can say that in theory, but what does it actually look like? Because the reality is, you're busy out in the field all day long, every single day. When do I have time to actually document this information? What do I document? Do I need to tell someone that they need to use the key fob to open their truck door? Do I need to get that granular? Right? There's just questions about how much do I need to document. And something that I like to start with first, that I think makes a lot of sense and is also achievable, is, if you don't know this, you should figure it out sooner rather than later. But to document your mission, vision, and values, I firmly believe that if you can effectively communicate to your team members, 1 or 1,000, your mission and vision and values, uh, as you start to get questionable of like, what information do I need to provide, that framework of what are we about and what is in alignment with our values, it kind of covers quite a bit. Like if you have a strong sense of your value to a customer experience being the highest quality, that's a pretty good frame of reference on how someone should act in the day to day. And so I think that's a really good place to start is, do you understand your mission and vision and values, and document that? And so that can either be by getting up a Word doc and starting to type it, or take out your phone and start recording yourself talking about your mission and vision and values. And that video, that document can easily be given to someone to have on hand to read or listen to. But generally speaking, outside of that, when you're getting into a point where you're starting to get more granular, I think it's important to keep a few things in mind. Number one, the information that you want to document and supply to someone, it has to be role specific. The information that you want to communicate to someone with, excuse me, let me take a step back. What I'm trying to say is, I think you have to have a good understanding of what does winning look like for that individual in that role. So maybe it's 1 to 5 things that define success for that individual. And it's a specific measurable KPI that you have set in place. It's not do a good job. That's not winning necessarily for that role. Maybe it is a technician, and less than 5 complaints per month is a KPI, right? Something along those lines, where you have a specific measurable KPI that defines what is winning for that role. And then you need to outline, okay, if we know what winning looks like for this person, what information do they need to know to be able to follow through to meet those KPIs? And so at that point, you're starting to document, the process of creating a lead in your CRM, and what does it look like to step onto a property and complete that property for that specific service. Will, I think you're a phenomenal example of what defining what that looks like and creating information that's actionable to someone. You have it listed literally in one of your sheds, your storage units, that shows like the outline of like, this is optimal for this service, and it's clearly presented, and it's a really great explanation. And so there's that aspect, right? So you now have the information. The next thing that you have to keep in mind is, how are you deploying that information? How are you making it so that that person has access to that information? And so I've spoken to a lot of business owners that are like, oh, a learning management system is what I need. I need to spend $200 a month on this learning management system, and it's going to solve all my problems. I don't think that's necessarily the case or true. In my opinion, you have to keep things as simple as humanly possible. The more complex you get with how you provide information to someone, the less likely they're actually going to utilize it. So, we live in a digital age, but sometimes paper and pen is the best thing, because it's the most simple way to provide the information that's actionable to that person so that they can utilize it. And so what I've found to be relatively effective is, if you operate off of the Google Workspace or the Microsoft Workspace, pull up a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, and you can link inside of there Google Docs or Word docs. And so you could have an SOP for how you create a lead and send a lead, and what the expectation is on following up with that lead, and in a Word doc, and that Word doc is linked inside of that spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is the only thing that you used to communicate to that team on where they need to find the information. But one helpful thing that I found over time is, if you're creating this program, whether you're a business owner or whether that's you as an employee that's in charge of this, think about it in, how can I make it so the less clicks to get to the information? Like, how can I reduce the number of clicks it takes to get to the information that they need? So maybe you've got a multi-layer process where it takes 6 or 7 clicks before they get the information they need. It's pretty unlikely that they're going to actually follow through with that. How can we reduce that down to like 2 or 3 maybe? And so that was always a helpful thing in my mind, was how can we reduce the time it takes and the friction it takes to access the information that they need to be able to win at their role. And then the last thing that I'll say with training is that you have all this information, it's documented, it's simple, it's easy to get to, whether that's digital space or whether that is paper, a handbook of some kind, you have to allow some space for coaching in some way, shape, or form. Because the truth is that not every situation, like it is impossible, in my opinion, for you to be able to document every single type of situation that someone's going to encounter in their lives in the job. It's unrealistic. So you have to think about this in boundaries, giving frameworks and boundaries with enough information to empower someone to just make a decision, but make a decision that's in alignment with what your mission, your vision, and your values are. So again, that's why that mission, vision, values was so important to me in the very beginning, because if you give boundaries with enough information, I think it empowers someone and equips someone and empowers them to just make a decision that's going to add value to the customer or not. And so that's my thought. Like, you have to allow some space for coaching and guiding. When someone is winning, awesome, celebrate it. If they're not winning, correct it immediately. Don't wait. Actually, I lied. There's one more thing. I forgot. One last thing is that if you have all this information, okay, we get the idea of coaching. It is super important that you push someone into just doing the job as soon as humanly possible. The longer that you wait holding their hands, the harder it is going to be to get them to actually just do the job. People learn from failure, not from success. That's just how it works. So the faster that you can get them the information they need and then do the thing, whatever it is, and then correct them immediately, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And then repeat and recycle and do that until they're good. And then you can focus on those higher level KPIs going forward.
Yeah.
Retraining as needed. Yeah, that's my thoughts. That was
I
very
love
long.
that.
My bad.
I love that. No, dude, that was very, very like methodically like thought out, and that was a fantastic answer. So for me, I know when I first started and I'm like trying to learn and figure out like what is a system? How do I create an SOP around this? And how do I build this out so I can get what's in my brain out and on a piece of paper or a system that I can hand off and start to delegate and buy my time back, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, it was very difficult because I'm a very like methodical, thought through, like, let me sit down, analyze this for an
Mhm.
hour, and then put it all together. But what I found is I was getting so deep into the weeds on every little
Yeah.
single step of
Yeah.
like, go down and click the start button on the computer, go up to the top, you know, and like that's not what they need. What they need is like ideally like chronologically, like, hey, creating a lead, like they should already be on the software. You don't need to be like open up your software. Go, you know what I mean? But that was me. I'm like,
Yeah.
they need to know everything, right? So like, but what you said hit on the nail. Like you have to simplify it, and getting those like 3 to 5 key performance indicators or the thing that actually moves the needle forward for that role
Mhm.
and position is what you need to focus on to make them successful. And that is what you build systems around. Just
Right.
like you said, not click the garage door opener to open up the garage. Like
Yeah.
that stuff's all basic. That doesn't need to necessarily be in the SOP. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's outcome based. What is the outcome you're trying to produce? Also, hire well. That's the other thing that I'll say. Like, take your time hiring, and be quick to fire. That's something, that a piece of advice I think is relevant in this situation. But like, hire well, whatever that means to you. But whether it's integrity or intelligence or a combination of both. But you have to give people some credit that they know how to log onto a tab or log onto Chrome and open up a tab and do X, Y, and Z. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And I'm afraid some people probably go way on the other side of the spectrum where they're like, yeah, I'm just going to assume
Sure.
that they know majority of this, right? And then they just give like a few bullet points, you know. So there you got to find that kind of happy medium.
Yeah.
So Ben, like once you do hire that person and you put them into this system that you've created, is there a transition process or a training process, or are you saying like, you just basically like, hey, this is the role, follow the SOP, let me know if you got any questions. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I think part of that is kind of determined on how much information do you already have documented. Either way, I guess the principle of it is yes, there has to be an indoctrination period of providing someone the information that they need. But maybe that's 3 days, maybe that's a day, depending on how complex the role is or the business is. I don't think it should be like a month. I think it's way too long of giving them information and expecting them to have results after that point. I think you should be, um, maybe another way to put this is like maybe it's 3 days of indoctrinating them on the information that they need and showing them how to do X, Y, and Z. And then pretty much after that period, they need to start being held accountable to results. Maybe it's a month goes by of when you're starting to implement consequences for not meeting a specific KPI, but they should be given feedback like as soon as humanly possible. So maybe it's after a few days of reading through the material and getting into the CRM and kind of navigating where everything is located, understanding your service areas and your pricing model and the process for a customer, the journey of becoming a lead and then becoming a customer. Maybe it's a few days of that type of information, and then after that 1, 2, 3 day period, they need to start doing something with the information that you've given them. But you should also be giving them feedback as soon as humanly possible. If their goal is to reach out to 20 leads a day, they need to know how many leads a day they reached that first day, right? That maybe they only did 10. Okay, you're halfway. That's the expectation is 20. You have a frame of reference now on how much more output you need to be considering as a new employee. But you also, as a business owner, the person being holding them accountable to that, how to coach them going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, and typically what I like to do in our business is there's really a 3-step, but there's an additional one at the end. So the first step is I do, you watch.
Mm-hmm.
And we do this like whether it's in the field or like if we're training a new office person, right? Like I'm going to do it and you're just literally going to watch over my shoulder. I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing. Then after that, they're going to do it and I watch them.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like you said, constructive feedback loop really, really quickly, coaching them up. And then after that, it's you do, I'm not watching anymore. And I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to come back and double check your work
Yeah.
for that period of
Yeah.
time. And so those are kind of like the 3 steps. It's I do, you watch, then they do, I watch, and then they do it without supervision. I come
Right.
back, double check. And then really the 4th segment of that is like they've developed enough where they repeat that same process as a trainer now.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up because that's insanely important. I think it's a part of helping to solidify the learning process is by teaching it back to someone else. I will also mention part of this is also like we're speaking very macro, and I think it's a good thing. It can also be tough when if someone's watching this and they're like, oh, I know I have got a technician that I'm about to onboard next Monday or whatever. So take this in kind and know that these are macro level steps, but the principles I think that both Will and I are talking about undoubtedly apply in equipping someone to perform. But I just got off of another call here a second ago, and something that someone brought up was that your role as a founder, CEO, business owner, um, is not just finding someone and having them come on board. It's about being strategic with creating a role and finding someone that suits that role and not necessarily the other way around. It can get kind of hairy when you just find someone and you're trying to figure out what makes the most sense for that person. Whereas if you're thinking more strategically about what is the role that's going to produce the most and move the needle, like you said a second ago, and finding someone that suits that role. I think if you're always on top of what's the next role based on the vision that you have, it's a good place to be at. And I don't think it's necessarily draining if you have a system in place for equipping someone to be effective in that role.
Absolutely. No, that's an interesting mindset for sure. Like as we grow and scale.
Mhm.
So that's awesome. So rewinding back here to Landscape Summit last year in October. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your subject of the speaking point was really around like building a brand,
Mm-hmm.
social media, kind of utilizing, ideally the internet, social media to really kind of build a brand, which you guys have done very, very successfully with Chorby, Scoop Soldiers, and now the Pet Waste Millionaire. So talk to me, like, what have you learned through this entire process? What are like some key pointers, like for somebody that is just maybe getting their business started, or maybe is doing 500,000 to a million, and they really want to focus on that brand consistency? Like, what are some key pointers that you would say that matter the most when trying to build a brand via social media
Mm-hmm.
and get that awareness out?
Yeah. It is. It sounds cliche to keep going back to it, but understanding your mission, vision, values truly gives it's a north star for you to understand the type of impact that you want to have in your community or the world, depending on how big your vision is. But those values specifically start to begin to drive an outline and framework. What is the brand about? And so, if you have, like, we'll take Chorby as an example of this. Chorby's values boil down to being ownership minded, being future focused, and being transparent in all things. So, with that in mind, there's elements of that that start to dictate the brand as a whole and how it's articulated externally, but also internally. And so, externally focused, I think those three things, to me, trust is a huge aspect of the transparency piece and ownership minded piece. And so trust. All right, that's an important value of ours that's going to be a part of our brand and what we're trying to articulate externally. So that starts to play into colors. Okay, so we know that trust is the thing we want to think about. What colors represent trust? Blue is a part of that. Okay, so we got blue. You get where I'm going. Like, I'm not going to go that much further into depth with this one, but you get the point of understanding the values that you hold dear that will outline the impact that you want to have. Start to play into all these little things of what kind of color do we want to use? What kind of font do we want to use? How are we articulating this message? Who are we articulating this message to? Like, who's our ideal customer in this case? So those are some aspects of that, but I think it was Hormozy that said that your brand is basically just a culmination of the things that you hold dear, right? The things that you value. And so you want to find a way to be relevant and matter to those people that also value those things. So, which is a really complex way of just saying that if you understand what is important to you, go and find a way to articulate that to the same people that fall within your customer base. And there's, your logo and your color scheme and those types of your font and those types of things start to play a role in that. But it's not as important as understanding what you value and being able to articulate those values to other people that also value the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So like somebody that is owns their own business, right? Like there's so many platforms out there, right? Like obviously we're here on YouTube, right? Shooting a podcast, and this is incredible, right? We're able to reach a lot of people. Um I mean, where should they focus their attention? Like, is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? I mean, like, is it TikTok? Like, is it their website?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on your goals. Firstly, I don't know that I said this in Louisville, but I personally don't think that social media is necessary for every business. The point of your business is to make money. So that's the frame of mindset that you should have when you're talking about what the things that you just mentioned. Is the point of getting eyeballs on your business to make money, or is it to develop the brand and gain awareness of who you are without the expectation of receiving a customer at the end of that journey, that life cycle? So if your intent, especially in the early days, of course, it's yes, we need actually, I'm gonna phrase that. It's always to get more customers, right? That's never goes away. And so if the point is to gain more customers and get people, if you have a lead funnel and that funnel boils down to your website that goes down further than that, the point is to get them to the website. Okay, then we should probably be thinking about your SEO, the content that you're adding to your website. You should be thinking about how does someone get a quote from you? How do you convert that customer to a lead? Is that all funneled through the website? Is there other factors that play a role in that? And so I think you have to consider what your end goal is in uh, expressing the brand externally. And so if your focus is to raise awareness to the values that you hold and what your brand signifies, then yeah, social media for sure has a play. And there's a few ways that you can go about um, producing content that's not crazy time consuming. A podcast, in my opinion, is one of the best ways to do that. I think a podcast, um, like part of why it can work well is because it is relationally based and you're building a community, and so you can have a conversation with someone where you're expressing your mission, vision, and values in various ways, but you're recording it, and you can also chop this up into pieces and you can publish in your social media platforms, whether you start with just one or whether you start with all of them, like all 7 of the major ones. Depends on your approach with it and what you want. But generally speaking, to answer the first part, I think of your question is you should be focusing on getting attention where it's going to have the biggest impact based on your goal. So again, if your goal is to get customers, maybe your focus should be on Google Ads, and you should start narrowing down who you're targeting. Maybe it's door hangers and business cards. Maybe it's a different approach than digital, but digital does have a play in the future, in my opinion. The way AI is running, dude, get in sooner rather than later is what I would say for sure. Don't wait, don't sleep on it, because it will undoubtedly have an effect, and it will probably be more important than in some ways in getting new clients than being relationally based.
Yeah, yeah. It's huge. Like social media, there's such a big lever there.
Mhm.
And like, I mean, even just meeting EJ, like I found out about him through a podcast that he did with Mike Andes, right? And then built that relationship and then met you at the conference, right? With
Mhm.
White Picket and Chorby and everything. And so like it's just it's incredible how that can play into the business, and I think it's really a long-term play. Like,
Mhm.
depending on the avenue that you do go, but, like, obviously with YouTube and podcasts and all that stuff, like, to me, I think it's, like, a lot more long-term
Mhm.
goal-oriented versus, like a short-term return. But, like, how have you guys, with Chorby and Scoop Soldiers
Mhm.
and the T-Pig journey, like, have you guys seen fruition or, like, good like feedback from using social media and the platforms with the reach?
Yeah, so I'll focus on Chorby first. So it was a little over a year. I think it was a year and 2 months ago. We started Media Club at Chorby. So Media Club is a culmination of internal team members um, who have committed to creating content that's with the intent of being published on social media platforms. So previous to that, we had a marketing agency that would basically just post one graphic a day. I think it was 2 videos a month is what they would do. Um, and so the engagement that it got was not bad at all. I think for a lawn and or a home services company, I think it was pretty great actually. Um, but we began to shift into what you just said, into long term thinking of, are we going to we need to develop um, we need to multiply where the reach of our brand, because we don't intend on just being a local company. We want to be a national company. And so we need to be paying more attention to where attention is, with the intent on gaining awareness for the brand. So with that in mind, we had one Gary V talk that EJ had listened to and asked the rest of the executive team to watch. And one of the things that Gary V had talked about was basically, if you're not posting multiple times per day, you're losing, if that's the intent. And so, all right, we know we want to post multiple times a day as opposed to just one a day. And the other key thing was posting videos, multiple videos every single day. And so at this point, we had Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I think we had Twitter. I don't remember if we had Twitter or X at the time. We do now, TikTok. And so that meant that we wanted to post multiple times a day on each of those platforms. That's a lot of content. And so how the heck are we going to do that? Again, that's where Media Club came into play. And so we had, I think at the time it was 6 individuals that had committed to creating content. And so the intent was to do at least one video a week is what we were asking. And anything else our media team would kind of catch up on. And so the Media Club initiative has grown and gone way better than we initially expected, because you have got a bunch of guys, mostly guys, who in their personal lives are not on social media and could care less. In fact, they don't like it, and I don't blame them. But they understood the vision of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here on becoming a national brand. And part of how we're going to connect with people is by being people focused and showing faces and showing personalities and showing who behind the company. And so they started off super awkward, as everyone does. And, at first, actually, it was like pictures of a plant. I'm like, all right, guys, we need more than just a picture of a plant. And
Yeah.
so it started to change a little bit. And we had an incentivization program that was underlined in all of it. And so now it's gotten to the point where you've got these 40, 50-something-year-old guys that are excited to learn how to use CapCut and post things on TikTok and find how to, what to post or what to create. And so it's gone better than we have imagined. And I think a major part of how that is because of the team members that we have set in place, and they understand our mission, vision, and values, and they're behind it. They're invested in it. And so that's what made a huge difference. But the byproduct of that is I was just in Phoenix recently, and I had several people come up to me and they were like, dude, Chorby's social media is like what we're trying to replicate. And they were really ecstatic about the stuff that we're creating. It was a huge, I immediately was messaging the team like, y'all, I just got like 5 people that just mentioned you, Jeremy Lowe, who you have no idea who these people are, but they know who you are. Like, how cool is that these people that are in different states know who you are and they're following our journey, your journey. And so that is really cool to see. But it's a lot of short stuff. It's a lot of educational stuff. And we've transitioned now. Chorby is as it is, and nothing is really changing at the moment. But with the Pet Waste Millionaire brand, started as more educationally kind of based. Actually, I'm going to phrase that. It was more personality based. And so, answering questions, but they're not super specific. To now, we're doing 2 major new things. One, with this takeover tour of us going across the country, we're documenting the entire thing, and we're producing like a 20 to 40 minute video of each leg. And it's produced in a way that's like, it's professional. It's not just a couple of people on their phones trying to put stuff together. It's professionally done. And so we have the first episode is actually going live today. Today is April 5th. So we've got the first one going live later this evening.
Let's go.
Let's go, dude. I'm excited. It's going to be awesome. But so in addition to that, what we're also doing on the Pet Waste Millionaire YouTube channel specifically is a high volume of answering very specific questions relating to the pet waste removal industry. Just like there's a lot of homeowners that have no idea that this service exists, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that still don't know that this exists. And so there's a lot of people. I'll give a shout out to Crouppens, and there's another gentleman, Poop Scoop Noob, I think is his YouTube channel. I think they've got great content, and we just have the structure and resources to put a lot of weight behind this. And so our intent is to have hundreds of this style of video, with the intent that, just like Mike Andes did. I mean, you've been following Mike Andes for a long time. He was creating very authentic and specific and real content long time ago. And as the industry started to gain awareness in social media specifically, he's been doing it for a very long time, to his testament, consistently, and it's not easy to do. But because of that, so many people have found value in his content and him as a person and his brand. We want to do the same thing inside of the pet waste removal industry. No one's doing it right now. We want to be the first ones to do it. And so that's the huge focus of ours moving forward throughout this year and beyond, is to have a high volume of very specific content that is SEO driven. And on the Pet Waste Millionaire website, it's also SEO driven. We want to get eyeballs, and the intent is about awareness.
Yeah, dude, that's insane. And I believe you guys are absolutely doing it, because you're right. Like, there's nobody in that space that's like doing it right, and like at the volume that like you guys can definitely do it. So I'm definitely excited for you guys. Anybody that is watching here, Ben is dropping some solid advice here. So hit that like button if you guys are finding great value in this. And where is that video? You said that video is going live today. You said what
Yeah.
channel is that going to be on?
Pet Waste Millionaire on YouTube. I think the actual channel is EJ McCoy - Pet Waste Millionaire. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, please, if those of you are listening, I also am a huge proponent. If you hate it, tell me. Let us know. We want engagement. Seriously. I hope you like it, and you guys subscribe to the channel and continue to watch the journey. But if you don't like it, give us feedback. We want to know how we can be better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, Ben, so we are basically in the process. So, like, our media company, it's called Outreach Media, and the slogan for it is to develop leaders. So, I want to hear from you what that means to you, of like, what does it mean to develop leaders, or developing leaders, and what is the definition, or what comes to mind when you think about that?
So the way my brain took it was about legacy. If your focus is to develop leaders, whether that's in your personal life or your professional life, I think that you're in the process of leaving a legacy that is about adding value to other people that transcends way beyond you. And at that point, it's really actually not about you. It is a much bigger and worthwhile and fulfilling thing to focus on. I was just again had a few podcasts today, and really great ones. They're on the Pet Waste Millionaire channel. But one of them was with this gentleman. His name is Josh Parnell. He runs Limitless Leadership in Houston. And one of the things that he said was that your thoughts dictate your feelings, and your feelings dictate your action, and your action dictates your legacy. And so if you can have the perspective of focusing on fruitful thoughts, on thoughts that add value to yourself and to other people, you're on your way to helping to develop leaders, again, personal or professional life. And so what does that look like practically in developing leaders? I think you have to be mindful that you don't know everything, and it's okay to not know everything, and it's actually better to articulate that you don't know something. I think that level of humility and focusing on connecting with people in a relational way that is focused on adding value to people, I think you're in a really good spot. But it's really important. I heard it earlier today, and it's just sticking with me, that your thoughts dictate your feelings, and your feelings dictate your actions, and your actions dictate your legacy. So focusing on leadership is a worthwhile thing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That was a great answer. I love that. Like really genuinely bringing value to people and like building a legacy that hopefully helps other people, you know. And that's really the core of it. And what I am learning through this development as a leader is to be able to impact other people and develop leaders. We have to look internally at ourselves
Hmm.
and get better each and every day, because why would somebody want to follow you or I, or be impacted by you or I, if we're not making a meaningful impact in our own lives,
Hmm.
you know? And it's full circle, right? It's like it's not just in career, it's relationally with your spouse, with your kids,
Yeah.
you know, it's with your faith. Like it's full circle. And so yeah, I think that was a really, really good answer you gave.
I will say thank you. One thing I will say to that too is I've also met with a lot of um, people that own businesses in the home services industry, and for false bravado and false masculinity and thinking that that pursuit is like not worthwhile because of ego is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard, and makes no sense to prioritize your ego over adding value to other people. So I imagine, knowing you well and the network that you have, that the people that are probably watching this don't necessarily think that way. But my point in bringing that up is, if you surround yourself with people that are have that level of ego and mentality, it's probably worth your time to maybe separate yourself from them. Maybe not cut ties completely, but you have control over your environment. You have the ability to engineer who you are around and the mindset that you have. And focusing on adding value to people is a masculine thing to do, in my opinion. It is a worthwhile effort. Shed that ego, man. Shed it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. I love it. So, one of the biggest things about growing and developing as a leader is through education, books,
Mhm.
audiobooks. So, what have you along your journey, now being the vice president of communications at White Picket, and through that entire journey with Chorby and Scoop Soldiers, and being public speaking over the last 12 months, like what great leadership, business growth, personal growth books or audible books would you recommend to people that are wanting to grow themselves, as a leader or in business?
I hate when people ask me this question because there's never one of anything.
You're right.
But I will say this truthfully, seriously, just Google the top 10 leadership books ever written. You could be that vague, but the piece of advice that I would give is just pick one and take it seriously. I think that that is advice that someone gave to me a long time ago. Is it can be overwhelming thinking that there's 100 different books that everyone says are bestsellers and are the best books for leadership. And while every book I'm sure is unique and brings a very interesting perspective, a good places to start is just to pick one and take it seriously. Whatever they're saying, that author is trying to communicate to you, just take it seriously and then try to apply something in your life and watch what happens and learn from it, and then just move on to the next one. So yeah, I can't give you one. I could think of literally five off the top of my head. And if you want me to, I will list them off. But the main thing I want to communicate is just pick something and take it seriously to the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Alex Hormozy talks about that. It's like literally picking one book and studying it.
Yes.
Like not just like a lot of people just like read the book or listen to Audible book and then they're done in like a
Mhm.
week or a couple weeks or whatever. But it's like if you really study the content and within the text,
Mhm.
like you can get so much value from that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's a wise move, especially if you're an overthinker. Just pick something and study it, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on the podcast here. I wanted to really give you the spotlight here because I'm really impressed with like you, with and everything that you've like done in the business and really like with public speaking, everything. And I believe like the content and the value that you brought today was absolutely phenomenal. I think it's going to help a lot of great people. So Ben, where can people reach you at? I know I was doing a little bit of research. I know you're on LinkedIn and a couple other social media platforms, but like if they have questions for you to reach out, maybe want to do another podcast with you, where can they reach you at?
Yeah. So, firstly, I just heard EJ say this recently earlier today. If he follows half of the advice that he gives to people, he's winning. I feel the same way about social media. It's something that I'm still in myself working on. I can consult with other brands and talk about the theory and how to apply it. It's still something I'm working on personally. And so LinkedIn is generally the best place, Ben Gonzalez. And I'll give you a link, Will, that you can add in there. And then also I do offer free coaching calls. So I'll also provide a Google link that anyone can set up some time with me. And I truly, like I said a second ago, and this is the advice that I do take, is adding value to other people is a pursuit that is fulfilling to me and it's worthwhile. It's my calling. And so I want to talk to as many people as I can and find a way to add value to their lives. So I do, again, offer free coaching calls. So click on the link, set up some time with me. I'd love to chat with anyone.
Absolutely. And anybody that's listening, he literally just said free coaching calls. Take advantage of it.
Please.
Literally, this is Ben Gonzalez. Like, he has so much value to give with training processes and helping build multiple companies. Like, it's absolutely incredible. So, Ben, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We got to do this again, man.
Would love to. Looking forward to it. Thanks, man.
Absolutely.